Just to be sure, on your behalf, we tested the seats. But please, don't fall asleep. Don't make it too obvious. Thank you.
So I'm just gonna answer your question. It's gonna be in English.
It is.
Just in case the exits are down there, she got some behind.
So how's the celebration so far, people? Good? Having a good time?
Exhausting.
Yeah. So how many of you have been here the whole time? Alright. I'll go fast. Well done.
How many speak French? Well, we still have some English-speaking people, so we're gonna have to speak English.
It's a pleasure though. Don't feel
It's our pleasure, but it might not be yours. It's not our first language. I seen a stormtrooper and they're like, oh, yeah, it's guarding the door.
So you have to stand over there? Oh, that's dedication for you. I mean, that explains a lot about stormtroopers.
Well, thank you for showing up. I feel so much safer now that you're here.
You found the right target. But it's the right room.
So, what do you remember the joke on stormtroopers? You should be safe. It's not going to be able to. Sorry.
But you might prevent people from escaping during the presentation. So
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
What's it called? Aggressive negotiation? So, has anyone seen another panel while you're here? Yeah, we've managed to. Great. This is actually the only panel we'll be proud of, so.
Thank you for not choosing the bad batch. And no, I'm not going to make a joke. Just in case.
Tempting, but no. We have to keep it family friendly as much as possible. Yeah, we're keeping down, yeah.
I hope there is a spatial feature in your presentation.
Yeah, one is keeping it away.
Kind stormtrooper, can you steer some people away?
You should have brought a tractor beam. I feel like a celebrity now.
Hello. Hi. Hello there. Morning.
Poor guys, they're on time. You're still getting the spotlight.
Just probably feels really that he's hearing some English right now, so that's why.
Claire, can you put your mic
Closer.
closer? Yeah,
Okay.
be closer.
You're going to regret it when you start when you go to the karaoke of the presentation. So the door is closed. Do you think we can start? No? Are we starting? Yes. Here we go. So, bonjour, and again, we already told you that yes, it's going to be in English, because we made sure that if everyone was speaking French, we would have switched to speaking French, but we're going to go in English. So, we are at the LucasFilles, which is a clever pun on LucasFilms and Lucas Girls, if you speak French, and suddenly speak French. And I'm Claire. I'm Aurélie. And we're going to tell you all about fairy tale in Star Wars with this panel called Space Tale as Old as Time. And I'm going to start right now. So we're not in the karaoke portion yet. But before we start, can you tell us what... Oh no, I know! Nervous. Do we all agree here that Star Wars is a fairy tale?
Raise your hand if you disagree.
Oh.
and get out.
Just get you out. So now we know we're on the same page. We're going to check if we're in the same books. So when you think about Star Wars and fairy tales, do you have any titles that come to your mind, like right out of the bat? Just give us some names. Don't be shy.
Please give us some names.
Nothing?
That's fairy tale.
Yeah?
Yeah, fairy tale, Star Wars. Yeah, Star Wars is like nothing. Well, but
Nothing we've ever seen before. Yeah, that's right.
well, at least you're going to learn some stuff. Cool. So I'm disappointed we're about the people that actually watch our channel. They should know a couple.
The Beauty and the Beast.
Ah, yeah, I like where this is going.
Keep that in mind.
So, back to where I was going to ask. What is a fairy tale, Ellen?
I'm glad you asked. So a fairy tale is usually an imaginative story in which the natural law is suspended and miracles are the norm. And in terms of psychology, fairy tales are considered to be projections of human fears and desires. So we get archetypes and tropes that come right out of fairy tales. You will find wizards and princesses and knights with a humble background. You will have to defeat monsters and dragons. And most of the time, fairy tales start with... that was the channel. That was the channel, by the way.
Oh, that's pretty.
Moving on. Usually, fairy tales start with a little something that lets you know that you're in a fairy tale. It's once upon a time, usually, but in Star Wars it translates to a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
And if you don't believe us, or if you still don't believe us, just so you know, George Lucas has said many times that when he created Star Wars, he wanted to create a modern fairy tale or a myth. Maybe some of you have attended What the Force and Scavengers Board podcast, which was dedicated to the myth in Star Wars. So here you got like a bonus, because we're not going to be talking about myth, we're going to be talking about fairy tales. And they work together, but there are some differences.
So we'll be starting from the original trilogy, and we'll be talking about different fairy tales. Not all of them, but we'll cover as many as we can. And we'll also talk about the classic Disney movies that have become references and codes and made it into Star Wars, whether as important plot points or elements more like Easter eggs.
And that's probably the right time to be looking for Easter eggs. Okay, so let's look for the eggs. Sorry, we haven't brought any chocolate. I'm gonna get some treats anyway.
So So, starting with the original trilogy, many people will go straight to Arthurian legend, thinking about the original trilogy. And indeed, this is an obvious reference, and the Arthurian legend can be considered, to a certain extent, as a fairy tale, insofar as you have magical elements that are involved. This is a classic hero's journey for King Arthur, and it works really well for Star Wars because you have Luke and his magic sword, his father's lightsaber in episode 4. It is given to him by his wizard mentor, Obi-Wan, who is the Merlin in this version. We also get a round table at the end of A New Hope in the briefing room on Yavin 4. And in this situation, Han Solo is actually your Lancelot. And going further down the original trilogy, we have this trio with confusing feelings, and we wonder who Guinevere / Leia is going to choose. Is it going to be Arthur / Luke, or Han Solo / Lancelot? There's another fairy tale that, oh sorry, I was supposed to put that.
Well, you know it.
You know it, right? It's your background, English background. There's another fairy tale that the original trilogy draws a lot from, and this is also a huge piece of Americana, and that is The Wizard of Oz.
Well, we kind of in Kansas, even though we're in Tatooine. I lived in Kansas, so I can say it looks like Tatooine. So, you're gonna start wondering why we're talking about The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy and Luke really have more in common than you would believe. They both are orphans. They've been raised by their uncle and aunt, who are farmers. They live in the middle of nowhere, and they live a very simple life. They are loved, but they feel underappreciated, and they have a barking sidekick. So yeah, Toto, but in Luke's case, it's going to be beeping R2D2, and
the profanities, obviously.
And they both have to save this barking sidekick from the evil clutches of the Wicked Witch of the West / Darth Vader, who likes to wear black. And also you have Obi-Wan there, who's going to be sad to tell you, but a mix between the good witch Glinda and the miracle charlatan doctor that he meets, the healer that Doc meets just before. The Yellow Brick Road is going to be conveyed in Star Wars as the blue hyperspace lane. And they're going to go on adventures, meeting 3 characters on the way. So Scarecrow is C-3PO, the one without the brain, but he speaks 6 million forms of communication. He's going to meet the one without the heart, who has a big moosh, who is actually a big mushy sweetheart, Han Solo. And the one who is very furry, but also not supposed to be courageous, but it's actually the bravest of them all. They're trying to get to Alderaan, the Emerald City. We didn't get to see it, and unfortunately we're never going to make it the way we did it in The Wizard of Oz, but when you get the visuals in the prequel trilogy, you could definitely compare visuals of Alderaan with the one of the Emerald City. Don't know if there's a horse of many colors. Maybe it might show up in the series later, we don't know. Forgot to mention a very important point in common between Dorothy and Luke. Both their homes get destroyed by the storm, a twister for Dorothy, stormtroopers for Luke. And then you got the citadel of the Wicked Witch, of course the Death Star, but they both have to infiltrate under the disguise of guards. At the same time, it's kind of a fresh take of the story because nobody's trying to make it back home. Don't care about Tatooine, don't want to go back. Home is actually the friends that you make along the way. And that's the fresh take that you have on this one.
So if we move on to Empire Strikes Back, we still get a lot of Arthurian elements. This is a much darker chapter, of course, in the story, and you can feel in episode 6 that there's desire to come back to more familiar places, and it's supposed to be an uplifting episode, and there's also this temptation for exoticism in episode 6, which means that once we're back to Tatooine, Tatooine is no longer Kansas. It has become the place where the Arabian Nights take place. So here we put a comparison between Jabba's palace and a fantasized vision of Baghdad during the Arabian Nights at this time. We also have, of course, a beautiful princess who is enslaved by a lecherous, evil sultan or caliph, the Jabba, in this situation. This is very much a motif from the Arabian Nights. We have also, sorry, I don't have a picture, fantastical creatures, the most prominent one being the sarlacc, that is basically a mouth in a sea of sand. And this is very much consistent with Arabian folklore and a warning about the dangers of the deserts, and it's standing for moving sands, actually, which was very much a danger to the people who wrote the Arabian Nights. If you switch from the sea of sand to a sea of water, you also have a parallel, shall we say, with the voyage of Sinbad the Sailor. So there you have it as well. Lots of references to the Arabian Nights, especially during the first arc of the Return of the Jedi. So overall, we see that the original trilogy is the classical fairy tale, right? You have the adventure, you have the romance, albeit a little weird during episode 5, and before that, we have compelling heroes and memorable villains, and the good triumphs over evil, and there's no ambiguity here, you know? And we have a happy ending, so all is well in the world, right?
No, because then you have the prequel trilogy. Not gonna trash it, don't get mad if you love the prequel trilogy. You could expect that we're not gonna have any fairy tales, given the very dark undertone that you have there. And it's true that you could rather compare it with a tragedy or with an opera. I mean, that doesn't make sense. I mean, there's something very meta about the fact that in Revenge of the Sith, you got this sequence at the opera where you hear about kind of hear, at least you got the tease there about the sad story or the sad tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. And this, you could compare this trilogy to a Faustian opera, to the story of Faust. And in Faust, there are elements of the fairy tale. You got the devil, you got magic that comes into play there. But what it brings more like idea is going to be a tragedy, it's going to be sad, but there are still fairy tales that you can mention in the prequel trilogy. There are two that we wanted to share with you, and that can really sum up Anakin's arc, and they're really interesting in that respect. The first one being the King of the Golden Mountain. I don't know if you've heard about that tale. It's the tale by the Brother Greens. It's one of the lesser famous, it's not very famous tale, so I'm going to try to summarize it for you. And it's very interesting. I mean, there are really a lot of points in common with the story of Anakin. So we start with a little boy, or just before the birth actually of a little boy, with a pact with the devil. That is really interesting into a child, a little boy that is supposed to come. So he makes a pact with his father. He wants to claim ownership over the boy when he's going to be bigger, when he reaches 12 years old, when he's big enough. And he really wants that child. It's the golden child, the special child. But there again, along the way, the kid grows up into a young man. He has a series of adventures. He ends up on an island where he meets a princess that is under a curse. So he frees her, and they fall in love, and they get married, and they have a child. But their love must remain secret. Nobody must hear about it. If people know about it, disaster will ensue. He has to go back home and see his father, but he has sworn to the princess that he will never tell anyone about it. But he goes back and, being very arrogant, at one point he just boasts about it, but the cat is out of the bag, well, I'm a king, I'm married to a princess. They can never see each other after that. But he still tries to go back home. He manages to find a magic sword that can kill everyone if he wants to. And he manages to go back to the island. He goes back to the island and finds out that the queen probably has betrayed him or might be betraying him. He's not sure, but he thinks that she's going to get married to someone. So he decides to use his magic sword and kills everyone. The courtiers, his wife, his child. And there you go, the Jedi Temple scene. And it's very striking in the way the arc is working. And the epilogue is even more interesting because he kills everyone. What is the last line? He ends up the king of the Golden Mountain, alone in his fortress of solitude. The king of the Golden Mountain, aka Mustafar.
And moving on from the King of the Golden Mountain, we have completely assumed parallel to Snow White. Padme is in the Star Wars version of the glass coffin at the end of episode 3. Sadly, she will never be awakened by her prince. He is the one who put her there, basically. And she died by proxy. She was poisoned by proxy. She didn't eat the red apple, but she was choked to death by Anakin, who heard the poison of Palpatine and killed her. And in this situation, Palpatine, who was Mephistopheles, is also the evil queen of Snow White fairy tale. He plots against the beautiful Naboo queen, who right from the beginning of episode 1 is shown as a vision of white skin, dark hair, red dress, gold, etc. So red lips. She's really coded like Snow White in episode 1. And in his design, Palpatine is very much like the evil queen, especially in the Disney version, because as the senator / chancellor, he has this extravagant wardrobe, wearing very rich fabrics and so forth. And once he turns into the emperor, he becomes this iconic hood, and is very reminiscent of the old throne we have at the end of the Disney movie, the throne that is trying to trick Snow White with the apple.
So in 2012, Disney buys up, it's not a revelation, I know, buys up LucasFilms, but you can wonder what's going to happen, what can we expect when the fairy tale factory acquires a new fairy tale playground that is Star Wars. So we're going to move towards the Disney era, and we're not going to talk about the series, we're really going to focus on the sequel trilogy, but we really want to talk about the Rebels series, because that was the first project that the newly branded DLF released, and it was targeted at kids, so young audience, so you could expect some fairy tale going on there, and sure enough, we think that they were a bit lazy in their concept at first, because it's Aladdin. Oh! How dare you! No! You didn't see anything. Forget. Well, I think Ezra is Aladdin's twin brother, a separate actor, or copycat, cosplay, whatever, I don't know what's going on. Young people there. They got the same haircut, the same jawline. They love parkour, they love to steal fruit. Eventually there's going to be an Abu character who's not running away. They both look at the city from afar, but looks like Agrabah. I'm looking at this one. They are also going to meet a genie, who is going to usher them into a magic world. They are orphans. Did I mention it? Yes, they are orphans. It's Disney. So of course they are orphans. unfortunately, so pissed about the spoiler. In the cosplay, it didn't get everything. It didn't get the hard pants, but it didn't get the lack of shirt. Fortunately, Ryan Johnson made that happen for us in Kylo Ren's favorite outfit. If it's not yours, it's ours. And we kind of contractually obligated to put that on the title because it's our gimmick, it's our good luck charm. It's been a good luck charm so far. And we try to put it on every episode that we do. We always manage to do it. So feast your eyes. There you go, beautiful, big now. Okay.
Next time.
Because otherwise it's going to be hard for me to go back. So sorry, we're going to put the ghost crew back on. The ghost. Alternate universe for Hannity, right? So you got Gareth the Tiger, you got the Genie Cannon, you mentioned Abu Chopper, they kind of speak the same, they could be speaking the same language basically. Era kind of have the hair and pants, and the look of Jasmine, but she's not the love interest in there. We got Sabine, but Sabine is a Mandalorian princess and a badass in her own right. And
She won't be silenced.
no. And also, even though it's mostly present in season 1, in season 2 we got a little treat. We got Darth Maul who decides to go full Jafar. Kind of. But they have to go looking for a magic lamp. Yeah, it's a hologram. It's a magic lamp. It is. So they have to go into a cave, and Darth Maul kind of did the cosplay thing. He poses as this fragile old man with a cane, and I mean my diamond in the rough. I mean like the guy was innocent and pure, and I could take him to this hologram. So we really have the whole thing there. And we also have a flying carpet. It's the local rules. I mean, they're going to come here and they're going everywhere. But there are at least 2 other references, sorry about the mic. There are at least 2 other references, the flying whales that come from Fantasia 2000. Let's call them Easter eggs, more than references. And, Palpatine stays true to his Evil Queen cosplay. The world between worlds. So there's something fishy with our villains in Star Wars. They really like to be bad girls. So here in the world between worlds sequence, we've got, of course, the costume, but we have the smoking cauldron, and we get the mirror, and it's really weird that the Snow White thing keeps on playing.
And if we move on to the sequel trilogy, we have, for the first time, a heroine journey and not a hero journey. And that's one of the differences between myth and fairy tale. In myths, most of the time, you will find a male protagonist, right? In fairy tale, this is the opposite. You have most of the time, not always, but most of the time, a female heroine. And there's
The best tales, anyways.
The best tales, yeah, that's right. And that's kind of Disney's trademark, right? So just, I want to warn you, fasten your seatbelts because this is going to be a bumpy ride. We'll be going back and forth between different fairy tales. So, still alert. Please. So,
The kids are right there.
we have a stormtrooper. So, as was often pointed out, J.J. Abrams started the sequel trilogy with what looks like a reboot or a rehash of the original trilogy. And that's no wonder if we end up with a reinterpretation of the two seminal fairy tales that we mentioned regarding the original trilogy at the beginning. So yes, you will find elements of Arthurian legend. You have this skull of Excalibur, Anakin's lightsaber is the Excalibur in this situation, and it's calling Rey. It's not very subtle in the Force Awakens, and there's this question during the entire sequel trilogy of who is going to be worthy of that weapon. Is it going to be Rey? Is it going to be someone else? You don't know. And although the sequel trilogy is moving from the Arthurian's legacy, because Luke was Arthur in the original trilogy, and Ray is more a Galahad figure in the sequel, and we're more like post-Camelot in the Arthurian legend. So at some point, Kylo is throwing his lightsaber in the water, in the sea. This is, of course, a reference to the moment where Arthur throws Excalibur in the lake, and the hands of Vivian, the Lady of the Lake, rises from the water to grab the sword.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get Luke's missing hand trying to. That would have been the right time.
So that's for the Arthurian legend, but there are even more elements of the Wizard of Oz. And this time, Dorothy is no longer Luke. Ren is our Dorothy in the Secret Trilogy. And she has a barking dog who is BB-8. This is your Toto this time. Dignified heir to R2-D2 legacy, in a way. And she also meets 3 companions. So there they are on this Vanity Fair cover. We have Finn, who is our scarecrow. Finn, the stormtrooper who wants to flee the conflict. He wants to save his skin and raise skin, that's about it. He wants to go as far away as possible. Han is still the teen man, having trouble with his big heart. And Chewie is still our very furry lion, just so they keep the same parts as in the original trilogy. And in this scenario, Kylo is our wicked witch of the West, so he's trying to finish what his grandfather started. He assumes the same part. He enters the movie with fire and brimstone. And when he crosses the woods, there are strong elements of "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too," because yes, it was after BB-8 / Toto at the beginning. Then he gets very much interested in Dorothy, and that's a direct parallel with the Wizard of Oz. You have also the moment where he claims the lightsaber. The lightsaber is the ruby slippers, right? And he says to Finn, that lightsaber, those ruby slippers, they're mine at the end of The Force Awakens. We're still with the Wizard of Oz in episode 8, and this is a reference that Ryan Johnson gave verbatim. It was completely wanted on his part. And he compared Snoke to the man behind the curtain, the man who creates illusions and who relies on theatricality to impose his power over others. And he compared the throne room to the lair of the Wizard of Oz. And in both cases, in both stories, the curtains are set on fire to reveal the illusion and the fact that the Wizard of Oz / Snoke is an absolute joke, actually. If we move on to episode 9, we still get the Wizard of Oz references because Kylo says, "Ow, what a rock." Dorothy actually makes it back home in the end of the Secret Trilogy, although it's not her home, it's the home of the first Dorothy. She goes back to Tatooine and not Jakku. It's the same, backward planet, same kind, anyway. And she goes back to the couple of the uncle and the aunt. Although they are dead, it still works, it still applies.
But the good thing about having Karen, as already said before, is that you can start playing the other tropes that we haven't seen so far, and sure enough, we're going to have some tales that we've never seen so far, Eric's journey. And that's what we could call the Cinderella effect. So, J.J. Abrams used the reference to Cinderella in his audio commentary for the video of The Force Awakens. He compared Rey to Cinderella, and later he compared Kylo to a prince that is living a princess in disguise. And the comparisons between Rey and Cinderella are, well, she's a poor orphan. She has to work all day long. She's not in ashes, she's in sand. But we see her cooking and cleaning. Yeah, she has to scrub a little thing and she's cooking weird-looking bread, whatever it is. Unfortunately, well, she's going to get another ruby saber with the glass sabers again, the legacy saber. This is such a multi-purpose tool, really. You can use it for many different things. Unfortunately, we're never going to get the bold gown. It's never going to happen, but we have both scenes in the sense that you're going to have duels, and duels in a way are dances, and we got many of them in The Force Awakens, but also, of course, the film you've seen that you just saw the set for the film scene. We think that yes, you could use this reference, but when you're looking at Rey and her arc, and especially in the first one, you could compare her better to Sleeping Beauty. First, you have the title, The Force Awakens, where if you have to awaken first, that means that you were sleepy. So, yes, the Force is sleeping, but her powers are sleeping, but she's dormant. And she awakes when the prince shows up on Jakku. And during the interrogation scene, he sets the story into motion and he starts the awakening for her. We see a flower, again at Easter egg, at the very beginning of the... We see a flower in her AT&T her home at the beginning of the story. And Rey is a desert rose, you could say, in a way. And if you think about roses and Sleeping Beauty in the Disney version, it's definitely a flower that is associated with a princess. In some English versions, she's also called the briar rose, so roses are important. Sleeping Beauty also, for this sequence with the call of the saber, the legacy saber, because the comparison with Cinderella, I'm not so sure with Abrams, but Sleeping Beauty, for sure. Because if you're thinking about the Disney version, the way that Sleeping Beauty is going through weird staircases in the palace, and then she hears like a song or voices, and she finds the spinning wheel, she touches it, and she falls into a trance and not die, but sleep. Well, if you're looking at Rey's sequence there, well, she's hauled with weird noises and everything into the dungeon, she finds the thing, she touches it, and she reacts just as if she's been like hurt. Oh my god, I don't want any part of it. This is a curse for her too. And minutes later, mere minutes later, she's gonna fall asleep and is put into a trance when she meets Kylo and faints, just like Sleeping Beauty, and is awakened by Kylo. Sleeping Beauty, you could also use it when you think about Snoke. Well, I can't develop it necessarily, but again, villains in Star Wars, evil queens, Snoke and Maleficent, they have some things in common. There's something that you could point out there. And also in the way that these characters meet in the woods, and woods are very important in a heroine's journey, and encountering the woods always means like a walk on the wild side. It's an awakening to sexuality. You're going to be meeting probably like a seductive or dangerous character, or your prince, if you think about the Sleeping Beauty version of Disney. They meet in the woods and they start dancing, and they don't know that they are listening to each other because they think their love is impossible. It's taboo, but not on Naboo, and they're going to recognize each other eventually. But you have two forest scenes in the Force Awakens with kind of dancing at the end. So you really find the Sleeping Beauty element present a lot in the Force Awakens. Forgot to mention, speaking of the woods, again, it's something that we wanted to talk about. Well, we're really running through the thing, actually. We thought we were not going to have the time about it. I might be able to talk about it. I think we we're gonna have the time. So let's think about Little Red Riding Hood, right? So you got the big bad wolf meeting Little Red Riding Hood. And if you remember, I think we've got the thing, all the promotion posters for The Last Jedi, the red is a very important color in The Last Jedi, for sure. That was the Little Red Riding Hood moment. I mean, it's not very subtle. And I couldn't find again the reference, but I remember when they were talking about the production for The Last Jedi, I think the front room scene, they kind of nicknamed it the Big Bad Wolf meets the Little Red Riding Hood. So it's really something that they had in mind all the time. Oh, yeah, well, that's an extra. Again, I was not supposed to talk about it, but it's one of the adaptations for Snow White. So no, we're not cosplaying as Rey and Kylo. This came just before, actually, a few years before, I forgot the date exactly. But if you are interested, I think it's the Lily Collins version of Snow White. And you play that next to the duel scene at the end of The Force Awakens. The same, there's a banter, kind of sexual tension, and there are love interests, by the way. That was not a problem for anyone.
And if we keep in mind the idea of a fight in a snowy forest, we can move on to our next fairy tale, which is a big deal for the sequel trilogy, and that's Beauty and the Beast.
Well done. Well, the one answer we got. Bravo.
And actually, it's impossible to analyze the sequel trilogy without the perspective of a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. There are numerous references and Easter eggs in the movies of the sequel trilogy. We have the rose and the rose-like flower that is in Res 8080 on Jakku, and right by its side you have a bell, beauty, come on, not subtle. And several times Kylo Ren is referenced as a beast. Beast by Max Kanata, and Rey calls him a monster at the end of the Force Awakens, and during a Force Bond during The Last Jedi, though not very subtle, again, very straightforward. You have, of course, the weird choice of words on Kylo's part. When he's about to interrogate Rey, he says, "You're my guest." What? Guest? So there you can see a fan art going full on Disney fan. Maybe we can ask our stormtrooper to do a reenactment. So how do you feel about Kylo Ren's approach to and Kylo's fits of rage are very reminiscent of the foul temper of the Beast in the Disney movie. So there are lots of parallels between Kylo Ren and the Beast. And countless real fan art, just like this one, and fan fictions and metas and analysis have explored this parallel in depth, actually. So it's all true, and in case you haven't figured out yet, we are Relo at heart. So Beauty and the Beast was a wonderful choice for this particular romance, because Beauty and the Beast is a female power fantasy, but it is also the ultimate depiction of the redemptive and transformative power of true love. True love, which is the only thing that can break any curse, the true love's kiss, of course. There is no magic more powerful than true love. And that's what made Disney successful and rich anyways, so why not go full on Beauty and the Beast for the reboot of the Star Wars franchise. Interestingly, it wasn't the first time that Lucasfilm and Disney explored that kind of relationship and explored the reboots and retellings of Beauty and the Beast. The last project that George Lucas made before selling Lucasfilm was actually Strange Magic. And Disney produced The Lion King 2, and you have two couples that are retelling explorations, if you will, of the Beauty and the Beast characters and relationships. And as George said, it's like poetry, it rhymes a lot. And at the time, nobody batted an eyelash at this love story between Marianne and the Bob King, or Kiara and Kofu in The Lion King 2. And it's interesting to point out that during the early stages of development for The Force Awakens, Rey was supposed to be called Kiara. There you have it. There was a parallel here again. Both male characters here have a redemption. They get their happy ending. And the world is at peace because they are in love with our female protagonists. And they bring back the harmony in the world because they have reconciled their differences. You see where this is going, of course. Beauty and the Beast also has a derivative, which is the enemies to lovers trope, with another variation, which is the villainous crush. And both tropes are very, very dear to our hearts. Very much so. So what's interesting with these takes of Beauty and the Beast is that the outcome depends on the redemption of the villainous character or the beastly character. If he gets his redemption, it ends up happily ever after as a couple with the female protagonist. If he doesn't get his redemption and stays full on villainous crush, it will end very poorly for him and perhaps for everybody else. And again, this is explored in the sequel trilogy. We also have many examples in pop culture nowadays of these tropes. Phantom of the Opera is one of the earliest famous stories of a villainous crush. It ends poorly, as you know. You have the movie Legend, for instance, where the Dark Lord is in love with the innocent Lily. And more recently, it was explored in Shadow and Bone, for those of you who have read the novels or seen the series. But nowadays, it's not something that we will find that much in Western culture, Western stories. But we find them in a lot of non-Western stories, whether in Turkey or Korea, or Japan, or Thailand, or China. Here you have an example of a Chinese drama called Love Between Fairy and Devil. And the title says no. They respect the program. Expectations were not subverted. Spoiler alert, it's got a happy ending. Everybody was happy about it. People were really afraid it would not end well. And you could just change it. Love between the Jedi and the Sith, or love between the dark and the light, whatever you want, that works perfectly. And in those areas of the world, the storytelling is filled with stories of that kind, and people really love it. Not just the girls, but the gentlemen, the kids, everybody loves that kind of stories. So, by the end of episode 8, you had 2 possible scenarios. You could go full Beauty and the Beast, so as already said, Death of the Beast, Return of the Prince, yada yada yada, True Love's Kiss, everybody happily ever after, yay! Or you could go full villainous crush with what you said before. So come episode 9. Everybody still? So, it's kind of a unique situation there, because you get both. And to our knowledge, that doesn't happen. Why? I don't know why it happened, like you. I mean, I love cheese and dessert, but in this particular case, you have to choose.
I mean, it has to be one or the other. Because we have the Beauty and the Beast thing, you got the Redemption, Return of the Prince, you got True Love Kiss, Death of the Windless Rush.
Doesn't make sense. That's very weird as well. From a storytelling standpoint, it doesn't make any sense, actually.
But, given this ending, we're going to move to our two final tales. Yes, we're towards the end. And for these two final tales, we're going to take you to the world of Hans Christian Andersen, who was not a happy camper when it comes to happy endings. Even though the first one that we're going to talk about has a happy ending, and it is
The Ugly Duckling. Yeah, you had not seen this coming, I guess. First up, with the design of Kylo's helmet. There's been a lot of jokes when TFA hit the screens about the design of his helmet because he looks like a duck or a platypus. So, first reference to the Ugly Duckling.
but jokes on them because he really is the ugly duckling.
But on a more serious note, if you dive into Ben Solo's difficult childhood and the trauma from his childhood of always feeling that he's not good enough, of being rejected by his family, dumped like garbage by his family, that's very much the feeling of the Ugly Duckling until it is revealed that he is actually the swan. And though Kylo Ren turns back into his swan-like persona, which is Ben Solo, he will not die on the swan song, because the only thing he is allowed to say in episode 9 after he comes back to light is, "Ah, what a world." And Rey, yeah, it applies to Rey as well, and there you have Swan Lake references for her, because she's the white swan being adopted by those two beautiful creatures in white, who are Leia and Luke. Yes, they are dead, but they are Force ghosts in white. And the icing on the cake is that she also gets her black swan moment, although you really had to keep your eyes open or you would have missed it. And of course, this is the dark Rey sequence that we have in episode 9, where she also has, sharp teeth to boot, just to make sure that we get the idea of the corruption of the dark side for her.
She's bad.
She's bad girl.
Bad girl.
And speaking of aquatic monsters, we are leaving the black swan behind. And it seems that the ultimate reference for Kylo is the whole-time favorite Disney princess, Andersen fairy tale that you would never expect for a villain. And that's
the pièce de résistance. And I'm going to dare and say it's proud and loud and proud, Kylo Ren is the Little Mermaid. Yes he is. He's a prince, he's royalty, he's got daddy's issues. He always feels like he doesn't belong, and he probably wants to be part of that world. And he probably doesn't know what to do with a fork, but he probably uses it to get his hair so fluff. He spends a lot of time in water, not so much in the first one because it's under the solid form snow. But in the second one, you're going to say, yeah, but he's not unlike Toad. Yes, he is. Every time there's a force bump, it gets very conveniently wet. The glove sequence, everyone. And there was a comic adaptation, the adult version for the comic adaptation. So, where you got the moments where the force bump closes, and you got Kylo alone with a big swoosh of water right behind him. Just like this very iconic picture that we all know of Ariel coming out of the water. So again, with Kylo, again, Rise of Skywalker, where he's very, very wet, conveniently naked, half naked, sea monster, half naked, sexy. Every time he gets wet, we all get bothered. That's for sure. But probably in different ways. He also becomes the puppet of the evil sea witch / snow. There again, it's really something fishy with our Star Wars villains. I mean, I hope we at least convinced you of that. There's something wrong with those guys. We should go in therapy session. There's something that we should wonder. Because both the evil sea witch and snow like to prey upon poor unfortunate souls. Thank you for staying on that time. They also lose their voices, both of them. What a world. And he melts with water. Anyways, I'm going to talk about it later. They both spend a lot of time in pain. Do you remember the story of Little Mermaid? Not so much in the Disney version, but if you read your book, she suffers. Every time that she has to walk, she's in constant pain. And that guy is in constant pain, physically and morally. He suffers. And the ending is really like, ouch, 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 ouch. Keeps on going. And by the way, if he wants to be free of his pain, and so are we, the ending is not going to be the Disney version. It's not going to end up the way that most people know it. It's going to go the Anderson way. Because, spoiler alert, if you haven't read the book and you just know Ariel, it's funny, it's campy, it's whatever, she doesn't marry the prince. She dies. I mean, she sacrifices herself for the happiness of the prince, who gets his happy ever after with somebody that he loves, and it's not the Little Mermaid. So he has to sacrifice herself, she has to sacrifice herself, and in order to get her soul back, because she doesn't have a soul. So she gets a soul, and she turns into sea foam and disappears. So in episode 9, he sacrifices himself so that she gets her happily ever after. Don't know if she's gonna find love so far, but you know, compassionate. She's so much better than I am. She needs to be happy, and but he gets his soul. He gets his soul back. Gets his redemption. He reconciles with his daddy, just like the Little Mermaid does, just before dying, and he disappears out of sight and not out of our hearts.
So to wrap it up, it's true that the Disney era ushered many productions and heavy references to fairy tales, but strangely enough, it vied away from the classical fairy tale happy end with the sequel trilogy. Although the original trilogy was just that, a happy end that made no excuses whatsoever. There was no ambiguity. You had to party with the Ewoks. I mean, we cannot get any better than that, right?
Yep, no, everybody. There's something very meta about Star Wars and fairy tales, and I hope we've convinced you by now. There's always one sequence in every trilogy where somebody has a tale to tell. And so the first one in the original trilogy was C-3PO, telling stories to the Ewoks. You have this moment that we're going to see at the opera, where Palpatine has something to tell. And you got, at the end of The Last Jedi, the very last sequence, you got the kid telling a story. And every time, those tales are going to inspire the characters, are going to have a strong impact on the course of the destiny and the course of the story itself. Because it's those tales that are going to inspire the Ewoks to go and defeat the Empire. It's this sad story of Darth Plagueis, the Wise Yoda, that is going to further push Anakin into his plight and what's going to happen to him. And it is, we know that Anakin and Rey grew up on Tales of the Jedi, it's something that we know, but it's also those tales, and that's the very ending of The Last Jedi, that are going to inspire those little kids. They are slaves, they have a different, very difficult life. What can help them make it through another day is to believe that they are heroes and legends and happy ever after. We need that.
So Star Wars tells us that we need legends, we need fairy tales to grow into heroes, and it's especially important for children who are coming of age. And this is what you get at the end of The Last Jedi. You have this boom boy who has the Force, and he has the ring of the resistance that Rostico gave him. And he is inspired, wishing upon his star to be a hero someday. And that's what the kids in our own world aspire to as well. So Star Wars, like any fairy tale, is supposed to inspire us and question us. And we deserve happy endings as well. What has happened to happy endings? Is it dirty nowadays to have a happy ending? We very much need them nowadays, more than ever, after everything we've been through and everything that's waiting for us along the way. Somehow, we need those happy endings, both in Star Wars to inspire us, and we need them in our lives as well.
Otherwise, the final word is all one world. Thank you very much. And we're so happy and excited to be here, and it was really a treat because it's such a small channel, so it was really fun. Do you have any questions? Because I think we still have
A few minutes, yeah?
Sure.
Yes, sir?
Sorry, what's the difference between Beauty and the Beast and Villainous Crush?
Well, the Beauty and the Beast is the positive side of it, because the Beast starts having a crush on the female protagonist, but she has to return his feelings. Most of the time, villainous crushes are not reciprocated. This is a law that is not, doesn't go both ways. And the Beast has to transform himself. He has to work on his temper, he has to open his heart to the beauty, to Belle, in order to meet her halfway. And this is a very balanced relationship, and balance is very important in the sequel trilogy, especially Episode 9. We are constantly told that Rey and Kylo Ren are equals in the Force. They are shown as equal protagonists throughout the movie. The transformation happens mostly on the Beast's part, and it stops being this villainous character, because love redeems, right?
I'm going to add on to that, is the original version of Beauty and the Beast. The Beast is actually not a villain. Is a monster, but not an evil monster. It's something that Disney put on there, but he's angry, and even worse in the animated, the live animation thing. But it's actually very gentlemanlike and very nice. He asks questions like, would you marry me? And the answer is always no. But it's really like the version we have right now of the Beast as a villainous crush is not consistent with the original version. It's this guy that, he actually didn't do anything wrong. As the way we put it in the Disney version, he just fell under a curse for whatever reason, because fairies are not very nice people. Maybe. Does that answer the question? Other questions? I saw some hands.
Young lady was raising her hand.
Since we know there will be another Star Wars movie with Rey as Master Jedi, do you think there will be maybe a happy ending for her or Little Maynard? I don't know.
Can we write the script?
If we get to write the script, definitely yes.
I have no idea. Some people are asking for it, some people are against it, and it seems like they're listening to people a lot. So if you want that to happen, I'm going to say shout, make it loud,
Let it all out.
But I don't know what the director is going to do. I don't know to what extent she actually writes everything, but just from a quick survey from what she did as a director, it's strong, independent women. And most of the time now, strong, independent women don't get their cake and eat it too. You have to choose. So
we'll see. We hope so, but nothing's sure.
we all for it, but
she deserves to be happy and in love. Yeah.
Young men had a question?
Hello, what about Ahsoka in Star Wars Rebels? Is she intended as the more experienced Jedi, like Yoda and
Ahsoka is more in the myth, I would say, than in the fairy tale. And because myths, most of the time, they're here to explain, more philosophical than they are psychological. That would be the main difference. Sometimes they come to explain, like, why do we have the night? Why do we have the day? Why do we have seasons? Or why do we die? So usually answer philosophical questions. And that's so far in the way I receive it, is really more on a mythical quests. Like, if you have to compare her to a character, she's Diana, she's our Artemis, she's the virgin hunter. That's who she is so far. So I would compare her with a fairy tale. Nothing comes to my mind. But yeah, that's an interesting question, because then you have to think about what is a myth, what is a fairy tale. Sometimes they intersect, but maybe she's gonna get her fairy tale. But so far she's living the myth. Yeah.
About the prequel trilogy. You're talking about myth, but like I'm thinking about a Greek tragedy about the principle of fate and the inability to escape fate in the prophecy of the chosen one. And maybe you have thought about this.
We've actually covered that subject on our channel. We talked about the Greek mythology, and the prequel trilogy definitely is a Greek tragedy. We are there with Sophocles and the Atriid family. Ananke, in Greek, you cannot escape your fate. That's pretty much the way it's put in the prequel trilogy, because we all know where this is going, right? Except perhaps the younger generations will get to watch the episodes from 1 to 9, but since we got the original trilogy first, we knew where this was going, basically. And there are lots of parallels between Greek literature and mythology and the prequels. That's absolutely true.
We can take a family question before we kick us out. Anybody? No, I'm going to ask you the question that I asked at the beginning, because maybe we have inspired you, and maybe you're less shy because you know us, even though we're weird ladies. Do you have any fairy tales that we haven't? Because we could probably get out. There are some that we don't know. Or is there one that you're going to be thinking about?
I would love to see a Eros and Psyche kind of myth for the quest of the lost husband, maybe for the post-sequel stuff. That would be a fairy tale with a strong female character, a female lead, but still being a fairy tale sort of story.
That's kind of the exception, actually. Cupid and Psyche.
Or some kind of, the Snow Queen is kind of also like a quest for Kay by Gerda.
Yeah, the quest for the lost husband. Mm-hmm. And you also find in Osiris and Isis, if you're into Egyptology, you can also pick on that. Well, it's a recurring thing, but you know what? Actually, Eros and Psyche is the blueprint for Beauty and the Beast. So you're going to find it in different cultures. The quest for the fiancé, betrothed, whatever. Yeah, sure. I mean, because it's not a myth. It doesn't explain anything, doesn't even explain love. But it explains, even though it's Cupid or Eros, it's really more a fairy tale, I would say, definitely. Because you got magic elements. But in mythology, Greek, when you think Greek, everyone's, it's a myth. No, they also have fairy tales. You have fairy tales from day one. People like to tell fairy tales.
There's always been folklore elements, so stories that were passed from generation to generation with oral traditions. And Psyche actually is very much your female protagonist. This is a heroine's journey. She's not Hercules, she's not Perseus or Ulysses. She's a female protagonist, so she's on her heroine's journey. It's true that we didn't dive into Campbell and Murdoch for this panel, but we could have. We already did it on the channel.
But you're Star Wars fans, so we assume
you know the blueprint of the hero's journey anyway. So,
and again, psychology. So that's the first thing that I said. If you're in fairy tales, even though it's magic, it's psychological.
Think of Carl Jung. He took his archetypes literally from fairy tales and turned them into psychological tools to explore the human psyche. If you think of the animus, the anima, the shadow, which is a very strong archetype, especially in Star Wars, we have the dark side. We have all these dark siders who are the shadow of our heroes. And Kylo Ren is very much the shadow of Rey in the sequel trilogy. So that's another perspective on the story.
Thank you again so much.
Thank you so much.